Sixers Fix with Scott Ninnis. Join one of the Adelaide 36ers' favourite sons as we deep dive into everything past and present about one of the most storied franchises in the NBL. It's Sixers Fix, your Adelaide 36ers podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Sixers Fix, your Adelaide 36ers podcast with Scott Ninnis. I'm your co-host Chris Pike, but the star of this show, obviously, because his name's on it, is Scott Ninnis, and we've had a terrific first two shows. And Scott, thanks for joining us again, and let's hope this is something that can really start to take off now that we're up and running.
Absolutely, thanks, Chris. Been really enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun.
Really good show last week. You had a terrific chat with Dusty Reichart. You had a chance to get to another game on Friday night, obviously against the Cairns Taipans. Are you getting some feedback around town about the show?
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I've had people from all sorts of different walks in life who some I didn't even know were interested in basketball sort of mentioned it to me. So, look, I think it's one of those things that, hopefully we can continue to grow it and, people can hear some interesting stories and certainly from some different characters and personalities that I've been involved with over the years. And, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And fantastic just to get some insights from you about everything that's going on at the moment, and obviously with your history with the 36ers, it's terrific that the club is supporting us as well to help get our brand out there a little bit, and also to the guests. We've had some great guests over the first two shows, obviously with Brett Maher and Dusty Reichart, and for this week's show, Rupert Sapwell, the fantastic Adelaide personality, had a fantastic NBL career, and later in the show we'll hear more about him. But you were able to sit down with him and have a really fascinating chat about a lot of different things.
Yeah, look, Sapper was a real cult figure here in Adelaide when he played, and obviously played a key role in those three championships we had in those 5 years from 98, 99, and 2002. And it was a fascinating chat with him. We covered a lot of different things, and not just basketball. And it was very enjoyable. I'm sure people will really enjoy it when they hear it.
Yeah, we want to get to that as soon as we can, so we won't hold you up too much. But we've got some on-court action to look back on first of all, because the 36ers played two games last weekend. And first of all, Friday night at the Entertainment Centre. Another pretty good crowd, just over 6,000 people there. But I thought the 36ers, after a bit of a slow start, they responded pretty well, and probably the experience of Jerome Randall and Daniel Johnson really came to the fore down the stretch. And once again, a lot of guys stepped up. Anthony Drimmick, Ramon Moore, Eric Griffin, Jack McVeigh all scored in double-figure points. And so far, when the Sixers have played well this season, it's been getting a lot of contributions from a lot of guys. What did you make of the game last Friday?
Oh, absolutely, Chris. I think we've touched on that before. That they're going to need a lot of contributors to be successful, and it's probably no rocket science. It's probably most clubs need the same. But I thought they did what they had to do. They got a little bit of a scare. With about a minute and a half to go. But it was playing against Cairns. It was probably something you would have had that win penciled in. But they go and beat Perth in Perth, and then Melbourne United. So, they're going to cause some trouble this year. So, I guess the good thing was the 36ers protected their home court. Yep. 2 from 2 there now. And it was, in the whole scheme of things, it was a really important win, I thought. Yeah,
I thought so too. Like we've talked about before, it's really important to win at home. If you can win 90% of your home games, it's a massive step towards making the playoffs. And to go 2 from 2 in a new building where you probably would think it might take a little while to build up a home court advantage. It's been a really good start at home for the Sixers, but they didn't get much time to rest after it or to celebrate. They had to head straight to Melbourne to play the South East Melbourne Phoenix on Sunday, who were coming off a 31-point hammering in Perth on Friday night. But Mitch Creek and his team managed to respond, and it was a good start by Adelaide, but they couldn't quite hold on down the stretches. It was a good game, a 10-point margin. I think probably flatters the Phoenix. I think Adelaide was a lot closer, and a lot probably that end-up margin probably suggests.
No, look, mate, I was really disappointed. I thought that there was an opportunity lost. They played so well, in that first quarter and a half, and got a good lead, and just let it slip, unfortunately. And I think the momentum's such an important thing in basketball. And I think, if they were able to go on with it, I think the Phoenix might have let that one slip.
Yeah.
But it was, look, I guess, the Sixers, I thought at times let themselves down, not really close, some of the players not really closing hard out on three-point shooters, especially when we went to a zone. And that would have been something I think would have really disappointed Joey. And, suddenly the momentum swings back to them. And, they got a couple of players you don't want to open the door for. And Creek obviously was a big part of that, and they had some great contributors. So look, losing to the Phoenix and Melbourne on the whole scheme of things isn't a major problem, but I just felt that it was an opportunity lost.
Yeah, I felt so too. And you make a great point about the zone. It worked great in the first half, but maybe that was just because the Phoenix weren't hitting their shots, and it made the zone look a bit better than it might have been. Because in the second half, especially when Mitch Creek comes out and hits his 2 threes in that third quarter, then Adam Gibson catches fire, another former Adelaide captain, and he just couldn't miss for a 5-minute stretch there and hit some big shots. And then Robertson got going as well and started to hit some threes. Maybe they stayed in that zone a little bit too long, because once the three started to fall, the Phoenix really started to look comfortable.
Yeah, look, I mean, Robertson is a class shooter. I mean, he's an unbelievable shooter.
Yeah.
Mitch Creek, that's an improved part of his game. But I think, Gibbo's been a great player in the NBL for a lot of years. I think that would be disappointing for Joey. Make him beat you in a different
Sure.
way. Make him put the ball on the basket. He's not getting any younger, and maybe he's not going to beat you going to the basket. But to catch and shoot, you're talking about a guy who's been an Olympian, knows how to win, and he's going to hit down those shots more often than not.
Going into last weekend, given Cairns was a tricky opponent coming off their big win in Perth, and then South East Melbourne haven't lost yet in Melbourne, would have you taken 1-1, or did you feel pretty disappointed come Sunday night that they didn't quite end up 2-0 from the weekend?
Well, I was really disappointed. I thought they had a legitimate chance to beat the Phoenix, with them having to travel back from Perth as well.
Sure.
And this time of the year is always an interesting one. And, everyone at the moment considers themselves a playoff possibility and maybe a championship possibility as well. So that will sort itself out over the next few weeks and probably already is starting to do a little bit, I suppose. But, it's a tricky one. If you say we'll take 1-1 before the weekend, we always get greedy and would hope for 2-0. Probably not a bad result, but I just felt that there was an opportunity to win that game in Melbourne, and then you start setting yourself up. Pretty well. You start 4-1 and instead of 3-2, but. Look, it's behind us now, and and hopefully they put it behind them and start focusing on the next game.
Just quickly before we get to your chat with Rupert Sapwell, some of the other results from round 4 across the league. I'll run through the results and you can let me know what stands out to you. Way back on Thursday now, New Zealand Breakers beat the Illawarra Hawks 103-72. Most watched game in NBL history with 1.9 million viewers when you take in the Facebook watches from around the world.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, incredible. Like we touched on before, the Perth Wildcats beat the South East Melbourne Phoenix 110-79. I guess you're not a true NBL club until you've copped a hiding similar to that in Perth. Melbourne United finally got on the board, beat New Zealand Breakers 104-98. Sydney Kings, still undefeated, beat the struggling Brisbane Bullets 94-79. Illawarra Hawks, they lost Aaron Brooks. They didn't have Josh Boone, but they put up a good fight, but still lost to the Wildcats on Sunday. And then on Monday, Melbourne United struggled again. Cairns Taipans got the job done there, 90-85. It was a big round, Scott. Anything jump out at you from all of those results?
I think the results by Cairns, I think, were well, maybe not a surprise, but I mean, I think that was probably the ones that people didn't expect. I think we've all been waiting for Melbourne United to hit their straps and get going, and that's going to need to happen fairly soon. Like it's not a long season. It's not a huge amount of games. You can't dig yourselves too much of a hole, and that's probably worries me a little bit with the Brisbane Bullets. They're going to need to find their mojo fairly quickly, before they dig themselves too much of a hole as well. But as I've said over the last couple of weeks, it's just such an exciting time of the year because you just don't know who's going to win games and who's going to lose games. And I really enjoy this time of the year, especially now that I'm not involved in it and results. I'm not reliant upon results to whether I keep my job the next week or so. But just really enjoying the NBL at the moment.
I'm enjoying getting your insights into the league as well, Scott. And now, speaking of that, Rupert Sapwell, he's a guy that knows the league well and obviously played a few more games than you, just 360 games in the NBL. You had a terrific chat with him, and let's get straight to it.
No problems. Looking forward to it.
And welcome to episode 3 of Sixers Fix with Scott Ninnis. We've caught up with two of the greats of Adelaide basketball in the last couple of weeks, in Brett Maher and Dusty Reichardt. Very fortunate to be joined by another one again, the one and only Rupert Sapwell. Welcome, Rupert.
Hello, Stu, and isn't it a nice day? 38 degrees, we're sitting by the pool in my backyard, got the dog at my feet and a red wine in my hand.
And I must make mention of that before we continue. I happen to be skulking around the Barossa Valley today, and a gentleman by the name of Joe Evans from Ballycroft Wines was kind enough to donate a bottle of his 2016 Cabernet for us to share tonight while we're doing this podcast. So if you want a great experience in the Barossa, Joe at Ballycroft is one of the great ones. He's a tremendous character, and as we can probably attest to, his wines are pretty good as well.
Oh, going down very nicely.
Now, obviously we are here to drink red wine, Sapper, but we're also here to talk about you and talk on your career. I was thinking on the way over here about your career. You were had an unbelievably diverse and interesting group of coaches during your career. Anything from Mike Dunlap to Brian Goorjian to Guy Malloy to Phil Smythe. Can you maybe just touch on a couple of those guys and the influences they had on your career?
Very fortunate, really. I mean, I did get the full gamut of coaching, and I thought that the experiences that they gave me really prepared me well for professional basketball. I think Ian Stacker was the very first one, just in, and if you go further back than that, I was part of the Nunawading junior program, which was a real machine back then. So I had some fantastic junior coaches, and then first professional coach was Brian Goorjian, coach and assistant coached with Ian Stacker, and Gorge is a very charismatic but control-oriented coach. I felt like he was meticulously prepared, but I always felt that I was nervous when I was playing for him. Mind you, I was 17, so I could have been nervous about a lot of things back then. But the Gorge was, fantastic for me. And then they sent me over to 3 years of college with Mike Dunlap, ex-36er coach. And
you survived?
Oh, I did survive. I'm very philosophical about that experience now because he was very, very demanding of me and put me through the ringer, especially my freshman year, my first year there, but all 3 years I was never far away from a famous Dunlap spray. But I think there's there's a coaching philosophy, and I think sometimes there's ways to do things, and coaches often feel like they've got to either nurture someone back from some sort of adversity, or if their kids never had adversity, try and create some. And I was pretty blessed to have an event-free childhood, and I think it was Mike Dunlap's operation to try and create some adversity so that I actually had something to fight back from. So I actually believe that, and there's very little that Mike Dunlap does that's not calculated. So
yep.
I felt like he toughened me up, and there were no scenarios in my professional career after that I felt were remotely as tough as
Sure.
my 3 years with Dunlap. So I think they gave me a real resilience there, and that was probably, if I'm honest, the most valuable thing I got from any of the coaches. And then came back and played 2 years at South East Melbourne Magic with Brian Goorjian again, and fumbled around there and tried to find who I was as a pro. And I took this meticulous diary, Ninny, where I was pretty intense, and I took this diary about what I ate, how much sleep I got, how energetic I felt, what sort of weights I was doing, how many reps I got up in my shooting. I was trying to find who I was as a pro and what my best routine was as a pro, and at the end of, after about 18 months of this, and I was going nowhere with it, I found out I reckon I was just too tight, wound out too tight. And I remember writing in my diary, look, you just got to have some fun, have a beer. Now that was a metaphor for just relaxing a little bit, and I wasn't much of a drinker, but to have the just enjoy the moment a little bit more and try not to be so intense about it. So
yeah, absolutely.
And then after 2 years of that, I really wasn't going anywhere. So Ian Stacker had then taken the job at the Geelong Supercats. So that was interesting because Geelong were a very fledgling and flailing franchise at the time, and went down there to get some court time and definitely got that. But unfortunately, I think we ended up being 6-22 or something, and they ended up handing back their licence. So after 1 year of getting a taste of what court time felt like, I was back out without a job. And
now I know that was a tough year for you, Sapper, because I remember you talking about it before. I seem to remember recalling a story that involved the current Boomers coach, Andre Lemanis, during a timeout. Can you shed any light on that story?
Should I?
Go on.
This is precious commentary for your listeners, Nini, and preface this by saying that I have the highest respect for Andre Lemanis. I think he does a magnificent job and the toughest job in Australian basketball to coach the Boomers team. But he was an awesome assistant coach with Ian Stacker at the Geelong Supercats, and I remember one of our few wins was at the arena against North Melbourne Giants, who were still an elite franchise at that stage, and somehow we snuck a win in overtime earlier in the year, and then we're coming to our return game back at the Glass House, and Ian Stacker had given this magnificent pre-game speech, and it was just before we were about to go out on the court, so we were fired up. This was an unbelievable pre-game speech. We all lent in. Ian Stacker, fantastic coach. Andre Lemanis, going to be one of the best coaches in Australian basketball. They all leaned in, and as Andre leaned in, a hip flask fell right out into the middle of the huddle. Clank, 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 right through there. I don't know what was in the hip flask, and I can only assume that it was probably empty by that stage, but there was the Australian Boomers coach with a hip flask that fell out of his... To be honest, and to be fair to both of those coaches, there was plenty of times where there were drink-worthy moments in that Geelong Supercats year.
Well, coaches get nervous too. Sometimes they might need something to settle them down pre-game. Before we move on from Geelong, I just want to go back. You talked about as a 17-year-old going over to college. I think even before that, you did something that I don't probably know anyone else did, but you started a Nike commercial.
I did have a Nike commercial, and I'd like to say that it was, based on looks. I don't think you get a good look at my face in any of that, but it was...
It was a 360-degree dunk from what I remember.
Yeah, it was. So they had the casting company came to Albert Park, and there was an under-20 state team practice or something, so they got us all to do some dunks at the start of practice, and everyone was doing some regulation dunks. There wasn't much creativity in dunks back then, particularly with a bunch of under-20 Aussie kids. But just for fun, I went up and tried a 360. I'd never tried a 360 before.
Really?
Got nowhere near it. Threw it at the bottom of the ring. And the director, who knew nothing about basketball, said, yeah, we want that thing. Do that twisty thing again.
Can he try and make it next time?
Yeah, try. And and so he locked in on this person doing a 360. Now, it had nothing to do with my ability as a basketballer or anything like that. It just happened to be that the 360 showed the full view of these shoes that they were trying to sell.
Correct.
So, anyway, fast forward about 2 or 3 weeks, and they were doing the shooting of this Nike commercial, and... I still didn't know how to do a 360, and they had the camera all lined up. They'd been there since 4 a.m. and put me in makeup and gave me all these fancy clothes that are supposed to look like street clothes, and it was a beautiful little outdoor basketball court in Collingwood, and they said, all right, so go and do that twisty thing again. They would do this movement, and they do the twisty thing and go up and throw it in. It's like, very technical basketball stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, look, mate, I can't do a 360. And he said, no, just do it. So anyway, try. And I'm, this is 10, 15 dunks in. And he starts to get frustrated. Like, just put it in.
Fatigue sort of starts to come.
I couldn't believe it, I'm like, dude, I can't do this dunk. as I'm doing it, I'm becoming more coordinated at this. So actually, there's a coordination thing involved in this 360 as well, and when to dunk and all that. And eventually, after about I'm not kidding, after about the 30th take, I finally get one. They've got it on camera. The whole place erupts because I'm just, how many takes does some guy need to do something? But put it on this Nike ad, and this Nike ad ended up running for 3 or 4 years, and they paid me a couple of grand to do it, which was
really?
Yeah, which was incidentally more
maybe you should have bought the red wine.
and incidentally was more than my professional basketball contract at the time. So I was wrapped with that.
But you were very athletic as a kid. Let's not sell yourself short. That was one of your real strengths, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah, I was a state high jump champion. I jumped 2 metres and 3 in high jump, so that's a decent high jump. And
absolutely.
But now, I think if there's a warning to all of them, if you could get a camera on us now sitting by the pool, we both used to be good athletes, choo-choo. What has happened? Look after your body, people.
We discovered red wine.
So, that was I looked up the Nike ad, and it was good. I used to play it in cinemas as well, and I remember going...
I remember it really clearly. It was different people from different sports, and it was... Yeah, I do remember seeing that a lot.
That was the Halcyon days, the first set of Halcyon days in Australian basketball too, where basketball was really a really cool thing to go to, and they were selling out the tennis centre at 13,000 people, and so basketball was the thing. So to get a young up and coming basketballer was probably something that they wanted to do. And I remember going on a date with a girlfriend at the time, going to the cinema, and what should show up on the cinema beforehand? There's a Nike ad. So,
nice. You planned that, didn't you?
I did plan that. That was the highlight of the night, unfortunately. But there was So that's a long time ago. Yeah, and actually recently my sister found that ad, so I thought I'd lost it. Like I had it on an old VHS.
It'd have to be on YouTube somewhere these days.
It was on YouTube, so people can Google Nike ads from 1990 or something like that. They might find it. So there you go. So
after Geelong, obviously that didn't end up well. I don't think you, along with a lot of people, got the money you were owed. Is that
correct?
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So where to from Geelong?
Well, one of the things, again, I've come back to a couple of pivotal things that Mike Dunlap did for me. One, he prepared me for the intensity and of basketball, but he was at the end of 1996 still the Adelaide 36ers coach. And the last thing he did before he left the 36ers was make sure that I was signed. So at the end of that 1996 year, there were 3 teams that were asked forcibly to hand back their licence: Gold Coast, Hobart and Geelong. Yep. So there were 30 extra NBL players and no extra jobs. So to try and find a job out of that was incredibly difficult. I reckon there were only a handful of players who actually picked up a contract, and one of them was with me, and I was one of the starters at Geelong, but probably pretty lucky to pick up a contract. And I came to Adelaide in '97 year when Dave Claxton was there, his first year. You'd come back, but I came back in Adelaide, and at the time I signed the contract, Geelong was supposed to have paid me out a year. So Adelaide signed me to a $8,000 deal with the idea that Geelong would make up the extra money. Then Geelong just reneged on their deal. So I came to Adelaide on $8,000. On $8,000. So
I think the first contract I signed was a 3-year contract for $50 a game. So, and I thought it was pretty cool too.
Yeah, so the money has obviously changed then. And look, if you ask most professional basketballers, what would you rather do? And they'd say, well, nothing. You're doing exactly what you want to do. So, the money stuff wasn't, really an issue as long as we could, make ends meet. And that's how I sort of came to start doing a lot of basketball clinics. But that 97 year was a bit of a rough one, in fact. I had a lot of time for Dave Claxton. He was one of the assistants in my brief time with the Boomers, and I really enjoyed him. But I felt sorry for him a little bit that year. He got probably inherited the team, which is a great opportunity, but that wasn't the right team, was it? It was a bunch of people who, for whatever reason, just didn't click. Well, they'd unlocked the cages basically, because Dunlap had kept them all so tight and rigid in a structure, and was a very forceful leader. And he got to Clacker, and Clacker was, well-meaning, but when you set the inmates free, all of a sudden it's a bit of a madhouse, and unfortunately it was a bit wild, that one. And you worked hard. I remember working hard, but we just didn't have the the horses either. I thought we struggled a little bit with import continuity there.
Yep.
I think we started with Jeff Brown, and that didn't work out, and Willie Simmons came in halfway through, and we didn't have the Rob Roses of the world anymore. You take Rob Rose out of any team, there's going to be a bit of a hole. So yeah, that was a bit of a struggle of a year, and a few things went down that was sort of dissolved the chemistry of the group, and yeah, it was a really rough year. And I remember, I think it was the last regular season game of the year. We were playing the Melbourne Tigers, and we had to win to get in, and to get into the final. And three-quarter time. No, it was a three-quarter time? I can't remember.
I think it was.
Yeah, so three-quarter time, Leon Trimmingham walks into the change room, and everyone's going, "Where's Trim gone?" And Trim thought the game was over.
That's where we were going that year, wasn't it? And I believe that he had his flight booked on the Monday, regardless. So yeah, things. Well, that's enough of that, which led into the golden era of Phil Smythe and Steve Breeny, and a lot of immediate success. Some of the fondest memories for all of us. Obviously, how did you find that era?
That was amazing. I remember first of all going in when Phil first came into the group and said, "Look, I was a Dunlap guy, and I know that Dunlap and Smythe had not gotten along. That wasn't.
That would be fair to say.
Yeah, and so in a lot of worlds, coaches politically might make that choice to say, okay, this guy's not one of my guys, and get rid of me. So
sure.
I went into Phil, fully expecting not to be re-signed, and I know Chris Blakemore at the time, who Phil had played with, was sort of floating around and not doing anything, and he was a fantastic Sixer at the time and had made the Boomers team, and a lot of things could have gone against me, but Phil Smythe, before I'd finished the sentence, said, "Nah, you're great." He must have looked at my $8,000 contract and went, we can afford that guy. So, first of all, that was the first nod that was like, hey, the guy is willing to give me a chance, so I've got to do everything I can to get that right. And we've talked about this a few times publicly, but, getting Darnell Mee was massive because he was such an unbelievable player, and then he brought in some goofball that he played with in Denver, and that guy was an absolute bust for the first 4 or 5 weeks of pre-season, and I know for a fact that we'd all taken bets on when he was going home.
KB you're talking about, obviously, and it was, and he basically came as just a recommendation from his best mate in Darnell, and talk about the rest is history.
Yeah, he was unbelievable, wasn't he? And I do remember being very conscious of this at the time, but Phil was very much a let-you-play type of person. Gave all the reins over to players. He really trusted his players, and coming from a very rigid background, even with Dave Claxton, but before that with Gorgon and Dunlap, who were very, very structured, very organised, and in every scenario you had a certain thing you had to do. And I remember defending the first on-ball screen and almost freezing in my tracks because I just realised that Phil hadn't given me a rule to abide by in order to guard that. And I said to him, and I just, I remember almost getting a pit in my stomach, like I just didn't know what to do. And I said, Phil, what do you want me to do? And he looked at me like, well, what do you want to do?
Just
who's coming off the screen, who's setting it, and he challenged me to ask questions about this and actually figure out who was involved in the on-ball screen, and learn how to defend that based on personnel. So for the first time in my life, I was forced to think on the basketball court, and I hadn't actually had to think about anything up until that stage. So Phil, for me, was the right coach at the right time because he forced me to think and forced me to become a thinking player. Now, plenty of people will argue that, well, when did you ever become a thinking player? But because I was very much energy based. But the idea that he let players make decisions on the court was very liberating for so many players. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you look back on those teams now, and they were veteran players who, they didn't need hard set and fast rules. So, everyone had everyone's back and everyone backed each other up defensively. Having played for, Gorgon, Dunlap, myself, half the trainings were spent doing drills of split line and lane line and Phil just let people play, and it was, obviously, history shows you he's definitely the right coach at the right time, and that success we had, 3 championships in 5 years, is, it's just such a special time.
Fun is vastly underrated, and I think the higher you get, the more coaches feel like they have to justify their stuff with science. Mm-hmm. And if it's not measurable, then it's not real. And so how do you measure fun, But the culture stuff that Phil was able to generate, and look, it was Phil, but by getting out of the way, he and Steve Breeney were smart enough to get out of the way. It allowed those veteran players to develop their own culture, develop a lot of buy-in, high level degree of ownership, all those sort of things that high-performing teams have. But those practices 5-on-5 were super competitive, and every day we're honing our competitive skills and learning how to. We ran a motion offense, so it's very hard to scout. You can't cheat the play, so we became a lot more cued in defensively too, because we had to defend all these unpredictable scenarios, and so our defence was vastly underrated. We scored a lot of points, but we had to defend those high-octane scorers every day of practice, so we became very good defensively as well, and those things all rolled into one.
You're right. I mean, we had Darnell, who obviously was an elite defender and one of the best defenders the NBL's ever had. We also had some guys who weren't great defenders. I think we had what we did have when we were talking about post defenders. Mark Davis and yourself were great post defenders, and you talk about the on-ball screen. You guys could show and recover your man quickly. But, the before-mentioned KB and Martin Catalini probably weren't the greatest defenders. I'll throw myself into that mix as well. But team defensively, just everyone backed each other up. And that was, you weren't afraid of getting beat because you knew your teammate had your back.
And that's true, and you can be a lot more aggressive defensively when you know that the rotations are going to be there. And even if they weren't, because we had no hard and fast rules, if we decided to be aggressive defensively, it was different from the last 2 plays because we had, we weren't locked into something we had to do every single time. And Phil and Steve gave us suggestions, and that was great, and we were smart enough to make those right decisions more often than not. Yeah. So it was a really joyous basketball period for me. And you see these Steve Kerr interviews about the Golden State Warriors. Well, not so much anymore, but when they were in their most unbeatable days, and he talks about joy a lot.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was a really happy time for us. Winning obviously helps, but whenever we get together, I don't think about the games.
No.
I don't look at photos of my ring.
Yep.
I look at. I remember people. I remember locker room banter. I remember all those things where we got along so well because the culture was awesome.
Yeah.
And when I think about those things, maybe I look at a championship photo every now and then, but then I think about scenarios and events that happened that made those championships so good, and it was all about those the jokes in the change room and the stuff that we used to do day to day. So the friendships are infinitely more important to me than the jewellery.
Now, I'm going to go on a limb here and say that your career highlight was probably Game 3 of the 2002 Championship Series. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, look, I reckon I can count on all the digits of my body, maybe 20, where I had good games.
Or 21, perhaps.
Yeah, I didn't play too many fantastic games, but for whatever reason, I don't know what it was, I can't put my finger on it, but I always played well in big games.
Yep.
And if I'm going to guess as to why that was, it's because I played at playoff intensity with every minute I had, because I only had, I don't know what my career average might have been in minutes, but I definitely spent more time on the bench than on the court, so maybe I'm 12 minutes a game my career. So we've only given 12 minutes a game, you can play as hard as you possibly can, because most people can go for 12 minutes. So all my life I'm playing as hard as I can for 12 minutes, and people who aren't used to playing in finals, they think they have to up the ante and play a little bit harder. Maybe they're playing a little bit harder than they normally would, but for me, I can't play any harder, so I'm used to that pace of the game, and everything to me was life or death. So the next 36er final was no different than the last one. So I think I felt like that was normal.
It 19 points in the first half?
It was 18 points in the first half.
And
I don't watch too many games, but if
that
I'm
one's
feeling
on
a little, if the sapper's a little bit sad, I actually do have that one, and I actually don't have any games. I actually don't have any games left, but the
That's
3
because
games.
you've taped all of them onto the
Yeah, got multiple copies of that one. There are, I think those ones. I don't actually remember very many games that I play, and I can't go run you through play by play what was happening. But again, I that was nice, and it was nice that it happened to me, and it was kind of ironic. Like I don't know, maybe I had 3 points the game before, so I'm not going in with a whole lot of form, but I think I felt confident, and the important thing I think for anyone who's going in a team environment is my teammates. I felt my teammates were confident in me.
Yep.
That's so important for an athlete to feel like his teammates have got his back, or like if those things happen, then you feel like you've got a chance. So I knew that strategically, Simon Dwight, one of the greatest shot blockers in history of the NBL, was going to guard me at some stage, and he wants to hang by the rim.
So you were safe out of the 3-point line?
I was, yeah, I really was. And so I knew that I was going to be have an easy shot out there, and so strategically that was always in my mind that, hey, I'm going to shoot my first shot, which was always close to my mind. I was always going to shoot my first shot, but when the first shot goes down, then, that sort of stuff generates, and I just kept getting open, and, because of our sort of freelance style of basketball, things are unpredictable, so it wasn't like they could scout anything, and I just remember things going my way, a few balls rolling my way and things happening.
I mean, that was such an unbelievable playoff run, but I remember in that game we went in at half-time. Phil would always let the team go in and spend a few minutes talking, and then Phil, Steve and myself would go in and chat about things, and I remember going into our office at half-time of that game, and it was 72 to 50 or 49, and we all just looked in there. No one said anything, and we just looked at each other and just started laughing. It was like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
We're going to win another championship.
We were 13 of 14 from the 3-point line. 13 of 14, Nenny. That doesn't happen ever.
Quite incredible. And look, I mean, after Adelaide, obviously you went on to the Cairns Taipans, and that was your swan song in Adelaide, and some up and down years, I suppose.
Yeah, that was a pretty tough couple of years. So I think literally a month after I'd signed the contract, a month after I got up there. So maybe it was on the day of. I remember it was being on the day of the first game. We got some news that really shook me. So my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. So on the day of the first game of the Cairns Taipans, my wife Cindy was diagnosed with breast cancer, and those who have ever had any serious illness in their family knows what a crazy time that can be, and so that obviously rocked everyone's world. So that became basketball became a distant second.
Yeah.
When you are faced with real life problems, a wife who just given birth to our second child was diagnosed with breast cancer, and no one knew anything. We were very scared, and up in a new place, away from our friends, and those things became real things, and that was something that was a real struggle. So basketball sort of at Cairns. Cairns didn't get my best, that first year especially, because things were on fire, and and rightly so. You tend to circle the wagons pretty tight when those sort of things happen. And
sure.
Thankfully, obviously, Cindy, got through the operation. She got the lump cut out, and had rounds of chemo and radiation, and some great support from my mum up there, and some friends, and the NBL, as it turned out, because the NBL paid for her to come back to Adelaide to get the treatment, because there was no oncologist up in Cairns. So that was a pretty scary time, but also just an absolute blessing, because we'd always had a pretty firm grip on reality, but when you're faced with a life-threatening illness, things become real simple.
Sure.
There's only family, friends, health.
Yep.
And once we sort of got through that, It was absolutely nothing that could have bothered us. So it actually springboarded us into the next phase of our life, sort of post-cancer for Cindy, and she's now, whatever that is, 17 years cancer-free. So another happy story, but
fantastic.
And got some great care and all that sort of thing. But people are undergoing these sort of things all the time. So when you go through that, the end result for us is simplification. Nothing. The small stuff is so immaterial. You learn to only worry about the big stuff. So it became a very, very simple, joyous life for us after that. So every moment was precious, and so that Cairns couple of years, or the first year was pretty rough. The second year, with still going through some of the treatment, I'm up at doing the feedings with the baby and trying to get together and be a professional athlete, and then because Cindy's going through chemo, so. Cindy, get up and do my baby for me, will you?
Probably wasn't going to work out all that well for you.
No, that's right. So, so it was hard. It was definitely hard, and but still, Cairns, fantastic basketball community. Loved my time up there. My parents came up to support us through that time. End up staying up there. They're still up in Cairns, so they loved it. I've got a soft spot for Cairns as well. Adelaide people could empathise with Cairns people because they don't have the resources that other people have.
Yep.
And do it tougher, and you do it with a very community base. And Adelaide is a bigger Cairns, but still have the same mindset, is that it's us against the world, and people don't want us there because we're a pain. We're a pain in their side, and you try and do things on less resources. And so that time up in Cairns was excellent. They'd never made the finals. They were easy beats. They were constantly down the bottom of the ladder, and after 2 years there, we made the final. Not only did we make the final, we beat Perth Wildcats in the final, knocked them out.
Which is always nice.
Yes, it is, because, I've got I'm an Adelaide guy, so I naturally hate the Perth Wildcats. So that time up in Cairns was really good, and we turned that franchise into something that was the Cairns people could be proud of. And then for a while there, particularly under Aaron Fern, they made a couple of grand finals and did really well. But those first couple of years there, we're changing the culture, and I feel together with guys like David Cooper and Brad Davidson and Anthony Stewart, who were were good quality guys. We changed the culture there and got a couple of wins and started making finals, and so that stuff was up there was still very rewarding for me personally. We didn't get the championships that we won in Cairns, but I felt like that was a really rewarding time. And Guy Malloy was there, and again, very meticulous coach, but he was the anti-Phil in terms of control.
Yeah.
Guy was the ultimate control guy. He liked to orchestrate everything, and was there kind of like the conductor, whereas Phil was like, would step back and get out of the way, and Guy really struggled with that. And I remember a couple of times Guy would say, look, why don't we run motion? We had guys like Marcus Timmins up there and Anthony Stewart and Brad Davison, veteran guys. Darnell Mee was up there in my second year, so he got it there. And I had all these guys who were fantastic basketball brains, and I asked Guy at the time, well, why wouldn't you want to run motion? And we ran motion in Adelaide, and it went really well. And he goes, look, I wouldn't run that because down in Adelaide you had so many smart guys. And I was like, dude, when was the last time you were in that Adelaide change room? So but the thing was, there was a coach mindset there, and the coach mindset was, I believe in you. You're going to do well. Go out and do it. Yeah. And whereas Guy was a naturally nervous but highly prepared guy who would do so much work behind the scenes because he didn't want to leave anything to chance.
Sure.
But what that transposed as in games was, I don't trust you. I want to orchestrate everything. And again, Guy is an awesome coach, and he's probably forgotten more than I'll ever know. But he's that was one of those classic examples of black versus white. This is. I believe in you, or I'm nervous and I don't want this to happen, and I really like this job and I don't want to lose it. So Guy, in the end, probably held on too tight. Yeah.
Well, it's been a fantastic chat, Sapper. Once again, a big shout out to this Ballycroft 2016 Cabernet. It's not too bad a drop, is it, Sap?
I feel disappointed. Because it's over. There's nothing left in that bottle. I've tried. I've looked.
Squeeze it out.
No. You do the suck. There's nothing left in there. So no, that was a beauty. And Ninny, I really love your podcast. I've listened to all of them.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'd like to say that I'm by far the most charismatic of all your guests so far.
Well, I've only had Marzi and Dusty. It's
a small sample size,
it's
isn't
pretty,
it?
yeah. But look, obviously Rupert, one of the great cult figures of the 36ers. The fans here loved you. We had the ultimate success with you 3 times. You're part of the glory years of the 36ers, and thank you for coming on Sixers Fix.
Pure joy.
Okay, welcome back here to Sixers Fix, your Adelaide 36ers podcast. And Scott, that was a fascinating chat with Rupert Sapwell. He's always entertaining, but we got to see a different side of him there as well, a much more serious side to him, and he's a great character. He had a terrific basketball career. He's obviously stayed involved in basketball since his playing days as well, and he speaks well, and I guess that's why he's had the media roles that he's had over the years. But that was a terrific chat, and I'm sure you enjoyed the chance to sit down with him as well.
Fantastic. It was. I found things out about Sapper that I didn't know myself, and obviously known him for a long, long time. We've been coached by a lot of the same people.
Yeah.
And Mike Dunlap, Brian Gorgon, Phil Smythe, Dave Claxton. It was really fascinating. It was great to get such a great insight to someone who not just had a terrific career, but is just one of those really genuine nice people that you meet as well.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed listening to it, and hopefully everybody else tuning in this week did as well. And yeah, thanks again to Rupert for giving up his time and for you chasing him down as well, Scott. Now, plenty to look forward to this weekend as well. Let's move into round 5 of the NBL, and all the attention's on Saturday at the Entertainment Centre. I think well and truly the biggest crowd expected in the building now for Saturday night, with the Sydney Kings, Andrew Bogut, Casper Ware and company coming to town. Jerome Randall has every reason to be fired up to play his former team, given basically in the off-season they made the decision that they felt Casper Ware was a better option than him. So you would think Jerome won't have any shortage of motivation, but so should everyone else on that 36ers team, because this is a chance to make a statement and to do it in front of a crowd that could get very close to 10,000 people. What are you expecting on Saturday night, Scott?
I'm actually predicting the 36ers to win, which people might think is probably a little bit crazy after our last outing against them. But I think there's some pretty good matchups for us. I think that Andrew Bogut is not going to want to defend Daniel Johnson and Harry Froling out to the 3-point line. If they can make some shots, it's going to change the context of the game, I think. And look, Sydney are rolling, no question, but they're not going to go through undefeated through the whole season, because that just doesn't happen. So there is a loss coming up at some stage in their future, and I just think there's going to be confidence. Coming back home and playing here, I think, you trust Joey in coming up with a game plan to work against them. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to be sitting next to Paul Reese, so hopefully I get to actually see some of the game, because he'll be talking the whole game, and certainly get him up on Sixers Fix at some stage in the near future as well. But I think the Sixers can win this, and once again, there's probably I'll be one of the few that would predict them, but I think it's going to be a really entertaining game. No,
I'm with you, and it's not just because we're here doing a 36ers podcast. I think on their home floor, Sydney have been good, but I think Sydney would still feel like themselves that they can still play a lot better. So I don't think they've quite peaked yet, and obviously without Kevin Lish there, they've still got room to improve. But interesting news this week. I think you would have caught up with it, Scott, that they've signed Deshaun Taylor, who was the man that the 36ers cut to bring in Jerome Randall. I don't think he's going to be in town in time to play on Saturday night. That would be an incredible bit of drama if he was. But what did you think when you heard that news?
Oh, look, it makes it a little bit more interesting if, like you said, I don't think he'll play, but it's gives that guy an opportunity to come in and prove Adelaide wrong, that they made the wrong decision. I don't think they did. I watched him in a pre-season game, and I was fairly close to it before that. I think that he's young. He'll get his opportunity to play, but it gives him a great opportunity to showcase his skills over this next bit of time that Kevin Lish is out of the game.
Yeah, I think it's the right move too. And it's no disrespect to Deshaun Taylor. I just think that this Adelaide team has 7 or 8 guys who are terrific role players. Daniel Johnson is the one stud on the team. And they just needed another experienced leader who would grab the big moments by the neck, and that's what Jerome Randall does, and that's why I think it's a good move. It's not because Deshaun couldn't have been a good player. I just think that they probably had too many players similar to Deshaun already, and so far we've seen with Dremick and McVeigh and these sort of guys that they've stepped up to play the role that probably Deshaun was going to be playing anyway.
Yeah, most definitely, and I think that's Randall is always a danger every second he's on the court, and. I've been really impressed with Anthony Dremick over the last couple of weeks, and I think his defensive intensity. He's come up with some really important defensive plays over the last few weeks. He's always a danger offensively, it's probably put those guys back into the roles that they could play with. Probably not quite as much pressure on them, and just ability to showcase his skills and shine. And certainly in the wins they've had, that's definitely been the case.
Have you noticed much of a difference so far in a Friday night game compared to a Saturday game at the Entertainment Centre? And are you expecting bigger crowds for a Friday or Saturday? Are you expecting it to be much of a difference?
Look, Saturday nights have traditionally always been the night for 36 home games. For whatever reason, Friday night traditionally has been it was when junior basketball is and a lot of junior sport throughout Adelaide. So Saturday nights has always been our main night. So that's a great thing. You bring Andrew Bogut and obviously Brad Newley, who's an Adelaide boy. And the fact they're 5-0, and you bring that team into town. People are going to come out and watch, and I think it's going to be very exciting to see a lot of people in that entertainment centre tomorrow night for that game.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Can't wait for the game. And if you haven't got your ticket yet, head to Ticket Tech and make sure you get along. It's easy access to the Entertainment Centre. You'll have no trouble getting there. There's not a bad seat in the building, so support the 36ers and get along on Saturday night. It's a big round 5 across the league as well, Scott. By the time we're recording this, we've already had one game played, and that was over in New Zealand on Thursday night. The Breakers got the win over the Cairns Taipans, 93-85. Quick reactions to that result?
I've just got Brett Maher, who's just walked in the room and said, "Stop talking about yourself." So there you go. Triple Olympian just making a little
cameo.
Out. Sorry, now I've got my daughter in here.
Let's give people a peek behind the curtain. You're currently having a family barbecue with Brett Maher tonight and his family as we're recording this, aren't you, Scott?
3-year-old daughter being a pain in the arse, a triple Olympian being a pain in the arse, mate. It's all happening in the Ninnis household tonight.
there you go. If you needed to know what this show's all about, there's a little bit of a peek behind the curtain for our listeners. The Breakers probably as expected beat the Taipans on Thursday night on their home floor.
That goes as expected. New Zealand. I think New Zealand are going to be okay. I think they're going to certainly challenge for that, one of those playoff positions. Friday night,
standalone game, Brisbane Bullets, they really need to win. The pressure's starting to build on them. But the Perth Wildcats come to town and, home or away, the Wildcats are never an easy team to get on top of.
Key game for Andre Lamanis here. Three losses on the trot. They just have to find a way to win this game. I get. It's always a little bit awkward talking about must-win games this early in the season. I find that to be a bit of a crock at times, but they really need to turn things around, and couldn't find a tougher opponent.
Then on Saturday, another Melbourne derby early in the season, South East Melbourne playing Melbourne United. You're talking about must-win games. It might not be quite must-win for Melbourne United right now, but given they're 1-4, it's pretty close.
Absolutely, and I think that's I'll go Melbourne United with this one. Not for any good reason. I just think probably for the reasons you just said, that they need to get back on the winning track, and otherwise, the seasons can start to slip away from you when you're talking about not a lot of games. This is a really important game for them.
Then on Sunday, down in Invercargill, so a big trip for the Wildcats. They take on the the New Zealand Breakers. A chance for the Breakers to start to build some momentum.
Breakers for me.
Yep.
I think they'll just be too important a game. Wildcats on the second leg of a road trip. Got some old war horses in that team that the legs might not quite stand up as well as they like. But New Zealand for me.
Then also on Sunday in Canberra, Illawarra Hawks, Brisbane Bullets. Depending on how the Bullets go against Perth on Friday, this could be an even bigger game in the context of their season. But for the Hawks, they're 1-6. Aaron Brooks is done for the season. He's after rupturing his Achilles. We're not sure on the status of Josh Boone either. So it looks like you would think, for the Bullets' sake, this would be a game they should be able to pencil in.
Yeah, I'll have a cheeky couple of dollars on the Brisbane Bullets on against the Hawks. Away from home, going to Canberra, which, let me tell you, back in the day was the road trip that you did not want to go to. Back when the NBL was a winter season and Phil Smythe and Herb McKeechin and some of these people were running around, going there playing that bloody hellhole of the Palace with 5,000 people on those concrete seats and always get your ass kicked. It doesn't hold great memories for me, and I think by the end of that day it might not hold great memories for the Illawarra Hawks either.
Yeah, I don't think so. Last game of the round, Monday night, Melbourne Cup Eve in Melbourne, and it's Melbourne United and the Sydney Kings. Casper Ware's first visit back to Melbourne. Depending what happens earlier in the round, it could hold a lot of significance for Melbourne as well. But we know how good the Kings are going. We'll see them on Saturday night in Adelaide. A lot riding on this game potentially.
Toss a coin for me, I think. Look, I might go with Melbourne as well, which makes Sydney 5-2 by the end of the weekend if my predictions are right, and they probably won't be. But once again, you've got some ageing players in that Sydney Kings. If Adelaide do what they need to do and give them a really tough game, backing out for that second go. I know there's a couple of days in between, but once again, Melbourne need to start winning games.
Yeah, well, as fascinating as all those games sound, I think the game of the round clearly is Saturday night at the Entertainment Centre. 36ers and the Sydney Kings. Make sure you get along. Scott will be there courtside. Hopefully Paul Rees lets him enjoy the game. It's going to be a massive game. A terrific show again. All thanks to you as well, Scott, this week. And your chat with Rupert Sapwell was fantastic. What can you leave us with in terms of some final thoughts? And then we'll look forward to doing it all again next week.
Oh, look, nothing mind-blowing, but, just the fact that it's... I think, basketball is so entertaining at the moment. It's just a great time to be around. You talk about, that New Zealand Illawarra game being the highest watched game in NBL, in history is... It's just incredible. The next star, with what they've got with those players going on at the moment is great. You've got the Andrew Bogut's playing back in this league, and all credit to Larry Kesselman. I think he's the money he's put in and the system he's put in place is augurs really well for the future of basketball in this country.